of their greatest son, an Anglo-Saxon warrior destined to be a champion for the ages and a national treasure for all time.
Back here on Busted Open, Dave LaGreca, Bully Ray, and yes, we are now joined by the national treasure, the man who holds the 10 pounds of gold, your NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the one and only, Nick Aldis. Nick, how are you today?
I'm all right, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on.
Gosh, you look good.
That was very nice. I thought he was going to come right out of the box and hit you with a one-liner, Dave.
Well, now why would you think that is the first thing that I would want to do? David LaGreca and the Busted Open Nation have been nothing but supporters of the NWA and the real world's champion, Bully. You know that.
Oh, I totally agree with you, but you're good with those one-liners, especially when it comes to LaGreca.
Hey, look.
Should we tell Nick about your man cave?
Oh, go on then.
Wait,
well, no, I mean, Nick, Bully, there's so much to talk about with Nick Aldis. He doesn't need to hear dinner table conversation on the show.
I want to get into everything with Nick and his NWA, everything that's going on with the NWA, his future. But Nick is a very manly man, and I just want to get his take. LaGreca, today's the first day that he's broadcasting from his new studio, his man cave in his brand new house. Unfortunately, his man cave was set up by his wife.
What? Hold on. Well, I'm sorry, but I mean, that's an oxymoron right there. Your man cave was not set up by said man. Is it even a man cave?
Thanks, Nick.
Nick, here's the thing you have to understand. It was a surprise my wife put together. It's flawless. I have no complaint. If I had a complaint, it would be different. But she did it as a surprise for me. You as a family man, Nick, and you're a family man. So you know family is the most important thing in the world. So when your family puts a lot of thought and love into your room, I think that's something that should be commended, not made fun of, like what Bully decided to do this morning on the show.
See now you're putting me in a difficult position. I must say I'm quite enjoying being in this sort of mediator position, this sort of judge position here. This is quite unusual for me. It's nice to be, especially with the esteemed Bully Ray on the line. I mean, for me to feel like I'm in the adult in the room is quite the honor.
All right, let's talk NWA, Dave.
Yeah, let's get into it because, obviously there's been a lot of news over the weekend with you. Honestly, when I asked Gabby to book you for today, it had nothing to do with Bruce Prichard's comments, which we'll get into it in just a second. But I wanted to get you on, Nick, because honestly, if I had to vote for the Wrestler of the Year for 2019, it would be the national treasure, Nick Aldis. You had a tremendous 2019. Obviously, what struck everybody here in 2020, you could not predict. And it's been unfortunate. But I think one organization that's been hit the hardest has been the NWA. NWA Power has been gaining such momentum and such a buzz. And, really not having NWA Power on Tuesday nights. I mean, what has that been like for you? What has the last 4 months been for you, for that championship and for the NWA?
I think that it's quite obvious that it's been frustrating. The one thing I would say is that, the wrestling business has a tendency to place a lot of expectations on brands and on companies and on wrestlers and, everyone in it really. But so I think that once, it's very easy to become a victim of your own success. And so once, we like you said, we had I thought a great 2019 and built a lot of momentum and, really we're carving out a tremendous fan base. And I have to say, right off the bat, the NWA fan base and what's sort of come to affectionately be known as the hashtag NWA fam. They have been absolutely phenomenal. They have stuck with us. They maintain a dialogue with us. For a lot of people, there are fans now for whom the NWA is in first place. They either came back to wrestling because of us, or this has become the place that they stuck their flag in the ground and said, "This is my favorite pro wrestling show." And that that doesn't go unnoticed. It's like I said in the open letter I wrote to the fans. but there's no getting around it. COVID was unfortunate for everyone, and then some other unfortunate circumstances that kind of halted our momentum. But I want to make this clear. We have never, there's never been any intention of things halting, right? It was just the way that we looked at everything. It was a necessary moment for us to say, okay, well, we need to pivot, we need to reset, and we need to sort of, in many ways, even rebuild, which sounds strange for a company with such a short lifespan. But I remind fans, and like Billy and I had a call with some of our Patreon subscribers the other night. We set the tone in 2017 and 2018 with the 10 pounds of gold series, and we had all these questions then. What are you guys doing? Like you have one person on your roster, like, well, you don't have a show. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, who's gonna be your roster? Are you gonna have other belts? And all this. I mean, because that's the sort of expectation that comes with a wrestling brand. And yet somehow we were able to build and develop and establish this new legacy of the NWA in the modern era with a 10 pounds of gold series. So we've looked back in that, and it's taken me and some others to sort of remind Billy, look, man, we're the best at this. We're the best at bootstrapping, with limited resources. That's how we've set ourselves apart. And honestly, like we've proven before, and like you guys have been very, strong supporters of from day one, by stripping away all the bullshit. Like, you really let the talent and the high, highlight and speak for themselves. And that's essentially what we're going to get back to. It will probably be in the short term, more going back to the prize fight approach to pro wrestling, making people care about one champion, one challenger, one prize, one culmination of a collision, right? And that's kind of what we're working towards. But ultimately, we had to take a minute to figure out how we're going to do that and how we're going to do it to maintain the high quality. I've always said from the beginning, I wanted the NWA to be like the HBO boxing of pro wrestling, right? You don't necessarily see it as often, but when you do, you're watching restaurant quality shit. You know what I mean?
Nick, one of the conversations that me and Dave were having before we came on today was the why the NWA had to hit the pause button. Now, in this pandemic era of wrestling, we've seen WWE still be able to put out a television product. We've seen AEW still be able to put out a television product. It would have seemed pretty easy for the NWA to continue to put out a product on YouTube, as you were doing every Wednesday night. Yes, COVID affected a lot of things, but did the extenuating circumstances with Dave Lagana and him having to stop down, is that what ultimately hit the pause button, since he was responsible for so many things that went on with the production of the NWA?
I mean, sure, certainly that was a part of it. Yeah, I mean, when somebody has that level of responsibility and then they decide to step down, in order to address those issues, yeah, like that's tough. But I think the other point you have to remember at this is that we're not, we didn't get a rights fee for our show, right? We were very blessed to sell out, the GPB studios when we did our TV tapings there. Every single person in those seats paid for a ticket, right? And so, and that goes a long way with, for us, because ultimately, it's still a business, right? It's not a vanity project. It's not a show for the sake of a show. It has to be run like a business. So without the ability to sell tickets and have paid audience in there, that would be problematic. I'm very blessed. I make a good living as a contracted full-time talent for Lightning One and the NWA. I make 6 figures. But that's not the case for everyone, and I had to earn that. I mean, the first 6 months I worked for this company, I didn't take a check. I literally got what I said, hey, I'll get whatever I get from independent bookings, and I'll prove my value. And I made plenty of money from the independents. I mean, I defended the title, 7 different countries, 4 different continents. I mean, I was doing just fine. So, but my point is that I've bootstrapped this. I've been all in on this, no pun intended, because and there were times where Billy said, hey, just let me know when you're ready to take a salary. And I said, no, we're good, and it was like I said, it was about 6 months. And I said, all right, now we've got All In on the horizon. And, obviously we're starting to sort of show that I could do business and do big business. So I said, all right, we can stick me on a salary now. And I've been very fortunate to do that. But I think that, and this is a point I want to make to a lot of the young wrestlers, wrestling companies don't just start and then just start handing out 6-figure contracts to people. That's not normal. Yeah. And so for, there's been a few guys who have had a few sort of sideways things to say about, the NWA in that regard. But ultimately, I generate that revenue for the company. This company, even at this point, is still generating like over 5 figures in monthly revenue. And that's largely due to me, and this isn't about me, putting myself over or patting myself on the back too hard. But the reality is there really, we've got some incredible talent, and a lot of people have worked really hard to make this thing what it is. But deep down, if you're really truthful with yourself, is there really anybody else at this point for whom, if they were to leave, that would leave this brand and this company in serious trouble? The answer, it's no. So like the point I'm making with that is that like I've earned that, and I did it by proving my ability to generate revenue, and that's the culture that we've wanted to install with the NWA, and that's the message that we've extended to current talent who have wanted to stay with us, and even to prospective talent that have reached out and said, hey, I want to be part of what you guys are doing. It's like, hey, yeah, it's great, but just listen, if you think that this is, if you think that Billy Corgan is some ATM who's just going to start handing out money, ain't working like that, right? You got to generate revenue and prove your worth, but he'll give you the opportunity to do it like he did with me. And I knocked it out of the park. And because I'm a professional, and that's, that's what I take pride in. And that's why I've stuck with the NWA. I think a lot of people are quite aware at this point that I, had the opportunity to go to another organization. And I listen, I'm very grateful to them for, for reaching out to me as early as they did. But at that point in time, I felt a loyalty to the guy that had taken a chance on me and had allowed me to define myself on my terms and define my own destiny.
Did you find it difficult for seeing an Eddie Kingston, a Ricky Starks move over to the AEW, to see them on TNT and to see them wrestle, like, knowing that they were such a big part of the NWA and may still be a part of the NWA when things start up again?
No, it's not difficult. Look, all you got to do is go back and listen to multiple interviews that I gave where I was the one who touted Ricky Starks before anybody was talking about that kid. And I'm proud of him. Like, and that's a perfect example where it's like, if there's an opportunity for you right now to go make some bread, go take it, man. Like, because I'm making mine, it's just that there isn't enough for everybody here. Right. And it's just like, I wish people could get that through their head, that they've got to stop comparing every wrestling company to WWE in terms of their operational ability, right? In terms of their infrastructure. It's just, it's asinine and it's stupid. You can't, like, it's these guys that come into the business that just, that assume, like, oh, okay, now I work for a wrestling company. It's only a matter of time before I have a 6-figure contract and I'm, making money. It doesn't work like that. Prove your worth, generate revenue.
Nick, when I sit back and I take a look at your career, and I've known you for a while now, I would say it's a classic example of some really high peaks and some really low valleys. With this NWA championship run that you've had and the way you represent yourself and the company as an extremely high peak. And now all of a sudden the NWA is forced to basically hit the brakes. What keeps you motivated every day? How it's got to be difficult to be like, damn it, things were going so well. The company was doing great. I was doing great. We had so much momentum. We have to slam on the brakes. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you first of all, just physically in the gym every day, your body, the way you pay attention to detail, your look. What keeps you motivated mentally? The whole, from beginning to end, what keeps Nick Aldis moving forward?
Well, that a lot of that is my own personal pride in myself. Certainly in terms of working out in the gym and taking care of my appearance, that's always been something, it's been something that's been a part of my life, since I was a teenager. So that's one thing. And, the reality is that I have a lot of strings to my bow. I think that just because I'm not necessarily tweeting about them all and, telling everyone, hey, watch this space, big things coming, brother. It doesn't mean that I haven't been working on some other things. In fact, I'm about 75% done with a pilot for a new series that I've been pitching to Billy for our Patreon, and, because that's been doing great. And that's emerged as one positive in this sort of COVID era that we hadn't necessarily appreciated as such a significant revenue stream for the business. And it's going to be a sort of documentary series covering training to be a pro wrestler, like different profiling some different kids. And there's some really exciting projects kind of stemming from that. And then honestly, it wasn't a bump in the road. It was a fucking pothole, let's be real. But it doesn't, I'm very, very confident in what I've done. I'm proud of myself for what I've done, but it's also, for me, it's very, very apparent to me that there's a lot more to come. So the motivation is not an issue. And if anything, I've been quite motivated by the fact that, obviously, with the circumstances as they were, I sort of ascended into a bit more of a sort of senior advisor role for the time being, and that's not a permanent thing, and it's no different to what I was anyway. I was kind of already in that kind of role, just simply because I've defined this company, through my work and vice versa. So I've been very motivated, by the fact that Billy has put so much trust in me. And as far as getting ready to move forward, there was never any doubt, never a shred of doubt in my mind that Nick Aldis was going to continue on and the NWA was going to continue on.
Nick, Nick, that I'm a huge fan of not only the NWA, but I'm a huge fan of yours. And I've talked about that a lot here on Busted Open. And if there was one wrestler in the world today that I would look at and say, he's not just playing a character, it's you. I mean, the way you come across, and you know where I'm coming from. I mean, sure. When you hear Bruce Prichard say, that you're just playing a character, you're not being it, and you don't have that it factor. I mean, when you with all the work that you've done, especially over the last couple of years, when you heard those comments, what were your feelings and what's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, you've seen some of my reaction. I took a minute to Bubba knows that perhaps 10 years ago, I may have reacted slightly differently. And I may have been slightly more reactive in general. This time I took a moment to process it. And Bruce and I even spoke on the phone, and Bruce claimed that I was talking about the Magnus character. I wasn't talking about Nick Aldis. Okay, well, then, his team uploaded the video as a separate clip, and they had a picture of me with the NWA title, the same title that Harley Race, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes held, the same lineage that I've busted my ass to rebuild and put into the modern era. And they used my name. So he's full of shit is the reality. And, it just, honestly, what he did was he just exposed the fact that he hasn't been paying attention to anything that's been going on. Because, like you said, anyone who has seen any of my shit from the last 3 years, the one consistent thing that comes up with everybody from Mark Henry to, Hall of Famers, Harley Race, Dusty Rhodes, even tippy top guys in WWE who have texted me privately, whose names I won't mention, who all say the same thing, which is, you know what, like, you have that thing. You present yourself like a real pro wrestler, like the kind of wrestling that I miss, the kind of wrestling that I thought wasn't here anymore. And for Bruce to say that, it just showed that he just hasn't been paying attention. Kind of like when he was running TNA, he wasn't paying attention. He was asleep, and the reality is that he took a shot and he, tried to give some half-baked sort of reason as to why he decided to say it and whatnot. Said he was going to address it, did not, let it breathe. So now he's getting a receipt. He's not getting a fucking receipt. He's getting a fucking invoice is what he's getting. Because like I showed on that, there's plenty of Hall of Famers who have a different opinion. And he likes to float things out that are subjective and just sort of present them as fact. He lives in this past sort of mentality where he thinks that because he's WWE, he can just say whatever about someone, and that's the only thing anyone will hear, and that will be the opinion that everybody shares. Well, it don't work like that anymore. Times have changed. People fact check. People can go and present their opposing opinion, and I'll follow up with fact if he wants to go there, because by the time Bruce was relieved of his duties in TNA in 2013, he'd got the viewing figures down to like 1 million people. Well, by the time I had the world title at the end of that year and through the start of 2014, we'd got the average viewing figures back up to 1.3 and peaked at 1.55, which was just shy of 1.561, which was the lowest Raw rating in history, which is the rating that came out the same week that he decided to trash me on his podcast. So I don't really know. I guess that maybe that little extra bit of rating that, that Raw got, that must be the it factor that I don't have. You know what I mean? Because it can't be that his entire roster don't have the it factor. God, if only I had the it factor that those guys had, I could have just got that extra bit of half a fucking rating. You know what I mean? It's just, I just was like, all right, that's enough. Gloves are coming off this time because I'm not going to sit here and take it. I have a 5-year-old son. I have to sit there and look him in the eye, and I need him to look at his father and think that he's a man. And I have to tell him to stand up for himself. And I have to explain to him that when someone takes a shot at you, you have to take it and give one back, because you can't just you can't be governed by fear. He thinks that guys like me are going to just sit there and take it because I'm always holding on to that sliver of hope that, oh, well, I don't want to get heat with them because, maybe I want a job someday. Sorry, I don't live my life governed by fear. Certainly not the fear of the ignorant.
On a personal level, I'm very happy to hear that answer, said in a very eloquent yet upfront and stern way. You handled your business and you spoke to him. I'm sure if you could have been face-to-face with him, you would have spoke to him face-to-face, and you didn't handle it on social media. So good job by you, because in this business, too many people take shots at each other on social media and do the immediate backpedal when they come face-to-face with somebody. Nick, I want to talk to you about a guy like Eddie Kingston. Obviously he had a great performance against Cody the other night on Dynamite, got himself over. I think we've seen Starks leaving the NWA and able to succeed in AEW. I've always thought that there was more business for you and Cody, at least one more piece of business. Is that something that you would be interested in? Is that something that has been discussed? Could we see more of a working relation or a loose working relationship with AEW and the NWA moving forward, even if it's just on a individual basis?
I mean, it's difficult for me to answer that because, I can't speak for Tony. That would have to be something that would be discussed between Billy and Tony. And like I said, I had a great conversation with him. And like I said, it was not my decision at that time, to stay with the NWA was based on loyalty and also on the fact that, I'm, like I said, I'm very confident in who I am, and I'm very confident in my value to this organization and to the value I've built up in myself in the pro wrestling business. But I was also aware of the fact that at that point in time, AEW was going to launch and be successful and be just fine with or without Nick Aldis. However, the NWA would have been had a bit serious trouble. So, in that respect, my take at that time was basically, hey, maybe we can work together somewhere down the road. But right now, my loyalty is with the guy who pays me and gave me an opportunity to show the world who I really am. With regards to Cody, I mean, look, it comes up every day. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Some way, shape, or form, there is some sort of fan sentiment every day from someone going, when do we get Cody Aldis 3? When do we get that rubber match? I so badly want to see that match. I think that there's no doubt that it will happen at some point. For me, at this point, it's developed its own sort of mythology, and it's sort of taken on a life of its own. So I think it can survive in time. And what I mean by that is, I think at this point, I'd rather wait until we can have an audience, because when you look at All In, 11,000 people standing at the bell before we even touched, even though I don't have the it factor. And then NWA 70, we set a box office record for one of the most historic pro wrestling buildings, in America. It's like that rubber match for me has to meet that same level of prestige. And for me, I'd like it with an audience. So, he knows where I am. We still maintain a dialogue from time to time, and we still text each other and stay in touch. I have nothing but respect for Cody. I mean, I learned a lot from him, and I dare say, vice versa. So I got nothing but love for Cody, the Bucks, all those guys. So I would be more than open to that. And as far as like Eddie and Starks and those guys, like, again, like, you won't find a bigger Eddie Kingston fan than me. And Eddie and I, we badly want to do business. I mean, the to me, that story writes itself. The promos, the build to Nick Aldis and Eddie Kingston. I think we're printing money with that. But it's ultimately, it's like everyone has to do what they have to do, to pay their bills. So it's like, I just wish in general that the business was a bit less territorial and a bit less, had a bit less pissing contest vibe about it in that respect. I think, and a lot of that I think just comes from fans, because they're sort of still stuck in that sort of Monday Night Wars kind of era. That's like, oh, people are jumping ship, and that means now I have to hate this other company, and and it's all this sort of territorial stuff. Like, no, man. And when I talk about the NWA fans, for example, like, I'm proud of the fact, and it's one of the things that's made us sustainable, that we have a fan base that put us in first place. That it's like, if they're going to spend their money, they're going to spend the money on the NWA first and everything else second. That's not a knock on anyone else. We're just proud of the fact that we've built a loyal customer base, and I'm proud of anyone else who's been able to do that, including AEW. But it's like, yeah, hey, but the good thing about that in terms of business, if you're looking at it business, right, black and white, bottom line, I think that it's pretty obvious at this point that if somebody wants to do business with Nick Aldis, the NWA World's Champion, it's going to generate a fair amount of interest from the NWA fan base, which could represent a significant bump in numbers for any organization on a short-term basis.
Well, because, Nick, you're the NWA champion. There is so much prestige with that championship, and Nick, I give you credit all the time, and it needs to be said. You're the reason why that people look at that championship the way that they do right now. That championship fell. A lot of, NWA fell. I mean, completely off the ladder. And you were able to climb up that ladder with that 10 pounds of gold where there is prestige. And I think it's fun to say, hey, could we get Nick Aldis and Cody Rhodes for the NWA championship? Could we get, another match with Nick Aldis and Marty Scurll? That you talk about it being territorial. The NWA is anything but territorial when you look at AEW and when you look at Ring of Honor.
Sure. And I mean, another one that comes up constantly is Kazuchika Okada. I mean, that's another one that comes up constantly. Oh, man, I want to see Aldis and Okada. And again, look, man, I like Rocky Romero, and, they New Japan have always seemed to be very open to the idea of building those kind of super fight type of deals. And, that's kind of, I think if we've proven anything, the NWA in the last couple of years, is that when you give us the opportunity to present like one real big match, one serious match, and we do not disappoint. We deliver. I mean, look at All In and all these other times. Like, we know how to make the big fight feel.
Well, Nick, I mean, appreciate the time. Thank you so much for the last 30 minutes. Thank you for addressing everything that's been going on over the weekend. And thank you for addressing the future of the NWA, because I know for myself and a lot of people that listen to the show, we can't wait to see what's next for not only the NWA, but for you, the national treasure, Nick Aldis. Nick, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you guys so much. And I just want to say really quick that like I've said countless times before, the support that Busted Open has given the brand from day one and the Busted Open Nation, it's greatly appreciated. We appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Right.
Nick.
The national treasure, your NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Nick Aldis. A lot to react to, Bully, when we're back right here on Busted Open.